Look, my job today is very much to be here to listen. That sounds a bit disappointing perhaps, but that's reality. As John has said, the Medical Research Future Fund is a government gift to the medical research community, if you like. And the Australian Medical Research Advisory Board, and I've put all of my colleagues up there, are there to advise the Minister how this money might be used. And you'll note that there's a broad representation of different backgrounds amongst the people there. I'll not go through all of them, but perhaps the most important thing is to realise that one of the members of the advisory board is Anne Kelso, who happens to be CEO of the National Health and Medical Research Council. And therefore, this actually maps out the fact that what we are trying to do is not to replace the NHMRC, but to work alongside them and do something rather different. So, just to remind you, the Medical Research Future Fund was set up by government as a perpetual fund, the interest from which is available at the disposal of the Minister. The Act requires us to advise the Minister about short-term priorities for the use of the money and a longer-term strategy for the use of the money. And that basically is what the advisory board has been doing through consultation, by going around the country and listening to people and hearing what they have to say to us. And what we will feed to the Minister is a synthesis out of what we have heard from you guys and from everybody else that's come along to the meetings. The timeline up there is correct. Strategies and priorities will be finalised by October. That's now. Not today, unfortunately, but very shortly. And there will be money available this year. And we are seeing this as a vision for the future. Now, perhaps the simplest way to look at this is that this is top-down funding. In other words, the money flows down because priorities and strategies have been set rather than driven by researchers at the bottom up saying, this is what I would like to do with the money. That doesn't mean you haven't got input. You've had input and will continue to have input, but it is important to understand the difference between this and the National Health and Medical Research Council model of funding, where basically a large part of the research that is funded is investigator-initiated. So how much money will there be? Well, obviously, this is forward-looking, as they say, but right at the moment, last year's money has been rolled into this year's money, and that will enable forward commitment of $784 million over the next 4 years. So you can do a quick division sum and work out roughly how much will be available this year for dispensing. And then the money will continue to increase over time until the fund is fully populated with the $20 billion that's anticipated by 2022. And yes, this money is going into the fund. Even as we speak, quite recently, another $1.5 billion was put in. It's all done very quietly, but it is accumulating. So there's the expected distributions, but these are actually somewhat low because actually it'll be near the two of these together, 180 million this year. Okay, there is an act which determines what we can do. We have to work within that act, and that act requires us to make consultations. It also spells out that we don't make decisions on the money, but that the government must take into account the strategy. The Minister proposes to Cabinet, the Cabinet decides whether it's acceptable. It goes through the normal budget strategy, and then the money is rolled out. We basically want to do something rather different with the health system from what the NHMRC does, but with the same goal in mind, which is to end up with a really good health system through research. And there are a number of objectives that we've mapped out, which I'm not going to go through in great detail. I mean, these are on the website if you want to have a look at them. The point is that we have actually thought quite hard about all the things you've told us and recognise that there are some dominant themes that came out in terms of strategy in the areas of public health, clinical care, health systems and commercialisation. And all of these are, remember, this is all about research. It's not about delivering service, it's about research. And then some priority areas for research, which again are all detailed on the website, and I don't want to waste a lot of time on them. But many of you will have seen this table already, and this was the synthesis of what we put together. Again, it's on the website if you want to have a look at it. And basically what we've done is looked at the priority areas, looked at the strategies that we've outlined, and then picked out the areas which we heard about from you which fit into each of the boxes that intersect there. Some of these are put in heavier type than others because these are the ones which we thought might be given some priority. And out of all of this, we have made some recommendations to the Minister for strategy and priorities. She's already seen the priority list, and there was no negative feedback from that. It's a short list. It's not a list like this. It's a much shorter list. Perhaps the most important thing to realise is that in the first year, the money will be not fully contestable because we have to get money out the door. And if we have a contestable process, it will take longer than the timeline of getting the Minister with some recommendations to put to Cabinet in September, October of this year. So clearly this year is going to be a little different from future years when there will be a process which will be contestable for the funding. The second thing to remember is that this is money which is going to have to deliver, and there will be key performance indicators built into the funding model, and funding will be contingent on delivering against key performance indicators. In other words, this is very much not open-ended, but rather targeted funding. And just to let you know that we're getting somewhere, I've taken all the data out of this, you'll be pleased to know, but there is a report to the Minister, a working document on the priorities for the first and second year, and there will be stuff in here which you can't see, and then a working document on the strategy under a whole range of headings, which the Minister will have at her disposal to understand why we are setting the priorities that we're setting. So that's basically the summary of where we've got to, and yes, there are no useful bits of information in there that you haven't already seen, but the point is that the money is there, it will be given out this year, perhaps more shovel-ready this year than in the future, and in the future there will be a contestable process. It will fit in with a strategy which will be available for everybody to read once it's been read into Parliament. It will be consistent with the priorities which the board have taken out of the information you've given to us. And that's really all I need to say just now. Thank you very much.